All right, so it looks like we are live, and I'm pretty excited about this. We should be live on Facebook here and also going to YouTube as well. And this is the 2023 January edition. We're going live here to talk about housing. And as many people are looking towards this new year to purchase a home or to potentially sell their home, there's so many factors that go into this. And I cannot be as condensed as I normally am with a market update on Instagram where we've got 3 to 5 minutes to really kind of condense what's happening in the background. And we do our best with that. However, in this update, this is going to be a live that will probably go for about 20 minutes or so. And what I'm going to basically do is break down the major factors that are going into a housing market and what you should be mindful of if you're going to buy or sell a home in 2023. And this is hopefully helpful for people who are home buyers and sellers, potentially real estate agents who are looking to really understand what goes into a housing market. We're going to be describing stats that we see on the MLS, talking about rental rates and where those are at right now, looking at jobs, mortgage rates, inflation on goods, foreclosures, and then some of the demographics that are going to apply here. Who are our buyers going to be in the future? Who are our sellers going to be? And then some predictions throughout the year. And so hopefully this is helpful. If you like this information, please follow me on not only Facebook here, but also on Instagram. You can also find me on YouTube as well. We're going to be streaming there. And hopefully you can find more information, not only on housing, but also on real estate coaching, and growing your career. So let's get started with a little bit of some of the MLS stats and what's been going on over the past several years. So not just like this year, but in years past. This is a quick view at InfoSparks, which provides data derived directly from Smart MLS. It's one of the MLSs that is out there. And you can see the cyclical cycle that continues to happen. It looks like these peaks and then these little valleys and then peaks and valleys. And then obviously over the past few years since we've had the pandemic, there's been a strong increase in housing. And I need to address that because so many people ask, well, why did this happen at the start? And I'm going to continue to say it. Most of it happened because people decided, well, you know what? I've got to exit these metropolitan areas. It was becoming very unsafe in those areas, high density populations. We need to get out of the metropolitan areas like New York, like Boston, San Francisco, Houston, et cetera. And let's get out to the suburbs. And the reason was not only social distancing, but the idea was also that I need to continue to work and work from home. And so if I'm going to work from home, I'm going to need more space. I don't know about you, but I have a family and I have a daughter and I have 2 dogs, and that can be possible in city living, but generally speaking, and in terms of broad strokes, the sizes of the living units are going to be smaller in a metropolitan area and larger in a more suburban or even a rural area. And so people were moving out to those areas, and it caused those areas to see an influx in pricing that they had never seen before. So not only was that happening at the same time, but this work from home situation was occurring, and that's caused many of these prices. You can see these median prices, at least here in Connecticut, to increase dramatically over the years. Well, what happened when the pandemic was, not in its full wave, but it was starting to get into these waning cycles? Employers were starting to get and ask people to get back to work from home. But what was realized here is that the American population wanted to be at home. They wanted to stay home. They wanted to appreciate their outdoors. They wanted to appreciate the backyard, pools, etc. And we saw this massive influx with goods being produced and being appreciated. And what ended up happening was we started to see inflation started to rise, and with that, many of the goods and services that we saw also started to increase. And you can see that here. Here's a great description of it. We've got, these are the building costs that have increased over the last several years. This is 21 into 2022. People ask, well, if housing became such a demand, well, what's the issue here? Why can't we just build more houses? And the reality is that we can. but we haven't. And that is a driving factor here. It's possible to build your way out of a housing problem if it's slightly out of balance. But the reality is that since 2008, many of the builders either went bankrupt or stopped building or slowed down significantly. And the reason for that was, just as I showed you before in one of these slides here, is that the pricing really wasn't increasing. And they really weren't seeing that much profit from this new construction. And so they slowed down. And what ended up happening is we went from about 500,000 units shy in housing to about 5 million units shy in housing of what we needed. And this incorporates a wide breadth of affordable housing and mid-range and luxury housing, all of it together. We were short the amount of housing that we actually needed for the American population. And so what ended up happening was, by the time we hit the pandemic and you've got these metropolitan areas divesting a large amount of their population out to the suburbs, those prices couldn't help but increase. Because as people decided to move into those areas, all of a sudden you started to see these prices escalate. And those normal home buyers that would be first-time home buyers that would even be second-time purchasers or up, all of a sudden started to compete with people from metropolitan areas with some deep pockets in many cases. And in Connecticut, we saw a large majority of people competing against New York buyers as they started to come into the area. Well, another huge problem happened with that as well. Always follow where the money is. And what ended up happening over the past several years was that investors saw the move and the strong move, not only in just housing and appreciation demand, but also in rents. So take a look at this for a second. This is the rental increases over the last few years. I think I've got that here. Let's view that apartment tabs here. The rental increases, give me 1 second here, have increased dramatically. And these rental increases increased 17% over 2021. And by 2022, that's where we saw just a little bit of increase, at least around 3.5%, almost 4% worth of increase. And only in the last several months are we seeing rental prices start to dip. So if you look in here, you can see the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and rental prices increasing significantly, compounding these increases. And they're realizing about 17% increase with just a slight dip in December, but then they increased again last year and then have had a slight dip. And now we've had about 4 months worth of dips in rental prices. And what that's telling us here is not necessarily that we won't have an increase again, but it's telling us that we're having a little bit of stabilization in our rental market. And so how does this relate back to pricing for houses? Well, we actually started to have investors get involved in the housing market like never before. And so although investors have been involved in the multifamily housing field, in commercial, et cetera, they started to jump into Airbnbs and started to jump into single family rentals like never before. And the reason is because as people decided to move out to these areas, they didn't know whether they were going to be in those areas in the suburban towns for a long period of time, for a short period of time, maybe for a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year stint. But what they realized is that these people who have deep pockets wanted to rent and were even accustomed to renting in the cities and decided to purchase these properties, these single family rentals. And so the average home buyer found themselves competing with investors. And many times across the country, they were competing against huge, massive corporations who are like BlackRock and others who are buying swaths of properties, even neighborhoods of properties at a time for $50,000, $100,000, or even more above an asking price or fair market value. And so the average home buyer was competing significantly against them, and they were seeing these prices start to rise and escalate and escalate. Well, since then, there's been a bit of a shift because in around July of 2022, we saw interest rates start to increase. And the reason for that is the government saw a huge issue with inflation. And inflation is a huge concern for any government. And the reason for that, let me explain this. You're looking at a 30-year mortgage rate, and you're going to start to see those start to spike as you look at the graph here. But the reason that it's such a concern is because if our money that we continue to print and have continued to print gets devalued because there's just more of it. When I have more of something, it's actually generally worth less if my demand is the same or my demand is less. That supply of money, because we kept printing it, actually gets devalued. And so what ends up happening is the cost for eggs, the cost for roof trusses, if we're building houses, the cost for gasoline, the cost for any of these things start to grow. And what ends up happening is the government has to pad that back, and they have to put that down, because if it gets out of control, it's what's called runaway inflation. And runaway inflation simply means that it has gotten out of control, and we need to do something soon in order to get it back in check. And this is what's happened. So the government has increased interest rates, and this is the rate at which the central banks will lend, or excuse me, the federal government will lend to the central banks. And what they've done is they've increased it at such rates. And we've heard in the news, you'll hear statements like, oh, they've raised it 50 basis points, or they've raised it 75 basis points. And what this means to the average person is that 100 basis points means that they've increased it 1% of the cost to lend something. 50 basis points is 51% of that 1%. So essentially, you're looking at 0.5% if you raise interest rates by 50 basis points. And the government decided to raise these not by just 50 basis points, but by 75 basis points. So nearly 75 basis points at a strong clip in order to try to get money to be more expensive. So it's actually more costly to do business. It's more costly to buy goods. It's more costly to just do everything. And the reason that the government was doing this was to actually, in their own words, create pain for the American family, to slow down this economy. And the reason that they want to do that is because all of a sudden, if you let inflation get out of control, you've got something that's called runaway inflation, where the cost of our goods is so expensive. I went to the grocery store the other day and I bought eggs for $8.80. And I was like, I could not believe this. Well, can you imagine if you're paying $20 for eggs and then it gets out of control? Well, what ends up happening is what if wages, what we can pay our employees, is stable or just barely competing against inflation? You all of a sudden can't afford your goods. And the reality is that life becomes extremely unbearable. And then all of a sudden you can have what's called a market collapse. And market collapse is absolutely not what the government wants. And so they're looking to actually slow down the economy by increasing rates. Well, how does this all apply? Well, if you continue to do that and increase those, if you don't continue to do that, then you've actually got problems with mortgages. And the reason is because it's no longer the best place to put your money. And so these mortgage securities that typically get sold on the secondary market, those started to be, it would look like it was a better deal to actually purchase US Treasury notes in the short term rather than mortgages in the long term. And so those costs for mortgages, in order to get investors, these are investors on the stock market, in order to get them to buy and purchase these mortgage-backed securities, they have to make it more attractive to them. And so what they can do is say, well, we used to be selling these mortgages for 3% or 2%, but now we're selling them for 4%, 5%, 7%, 8%. And that's why you've seen in past months, these mortgage rates start to increase. Well, I need to inform you, if you're looking to buy a house or you're looking to sell a house, this is important to pay attention to, because inflation is directly related to mortgage prices. And it's not an absolute correlation here, but what you do need to realize here is that as inflation gets out of control, the mortgage prices start to rise. And if you see inflation getting in control, now all of a sudden you've actually got mortgage prices that are more in line. So let me give you a little bit of a quick look at this here. Hopefully you can see these. This is our mortgage rates as they're starting to increase, and this is inflation as it started to decline over the past several months. And we're looking on the far left at inflation overall, and it used to be at 8 and 9%, and now we're looking at it at 6%, and that is simply due to these strong increases that the government has been placing. And as you can see, if we take away that inflation, we just simply look at the mortgage chart here, we're starting to see that those mortgages are starting to get into a stabilization zone. And it's predicted over the course of the next year that inflation's still around for quite some time, everyone. As much as they're increasing these rates, inflation's coming back into view, back into a realm where we're headed towards our target. But the target for the federal government is around 2% for inflation, which, whether you like it or you think that's reasonable or not, they've got a long way to go. And so these interest rates and interest rate hikes may continue to occur for the next several months. And what we're likely to see is mortgage interest rates starting to stabilize out in the 5% and 6% range. Now, they may get down to 4%. That's a possibility. But if you're really truly looking for mortgage rates to dip back towards pre-pandemic and slightly post-pandemic levels, then I think you might be in a very long waiting game. And the reason for that is inflation would have to get significantly under control, and investors would have to be satisfied once again with getting 2 and 3% for their mortgages on the secondary market. And so that might be some time. And so if you've been looking to buy a house, this is what you need to consider. As you look at this chart for how pricing has increased over the past several years, you can see in the last 10 years, pricing just continues to increase over and above. If you look over the past 3 years, we've seen some massive increase in pricing. And so what you're eventually doing is you're saying, I'm waiting for my median sale price of $215. It's now gone up to $300, nearly over $100,000 higher. So you'll pay $100,000 more in order to wait for a property in order to potentially stabilize or for interest rates to stabilize. And so what we hear a lot of buyers in the market saying is, I'm waiting for the prices to stabilize, or I'm waiting for the interest rates to stabilize, and none of those are occurring. And I need to be really clear about that. We don't see any of that occurring over the last 3 years. Now, that may occur into the future, and the signs that we would look for in order to see if that was going to occur is actually delinquencies. That's something that we would look at. It's been a big topic in the news to watch and see if delinquencies are going to rise. Last year, many people were looking at the October numbers, and that delinquencies were around 3.8% and 4%, 5%. Those are numbers that start to indicate that we could head into a serious time period. But just in the past several months, we've seen a 1% change actually moving towards more stability and solvency for many homeowners and mortgage holders, down to a 2.8% delinquency rate, which is actually very encouraging. If we were to see delinquencies begin to increase even greater, then we would start to be concerned that people can't pay their mortgages. If they can't pay their mortgages, then we would start to see more inventory start to flood to the market. And then in that case, we could suggest we might be headed for some real danger here. But let's get back over to these prices. We're going to look from our price standpoint here, and now we're going to view some of the other factors that are going on. Not only are prices something to be watched, but also the amount of inventory that's out there. So here's the amount of new listings that happen every year. If you're looking for a home, well, March is your time, and all the way up until June. This is when you see the most amount of houses start to come to the market. But just remember that even last year, we're peaking out in June, but really we're just seeing these significant plummets and lack of inventory. So if you remember back to 2019 and before, maybe some of your friends bought homes before the pandemic or during, they had quite a lot of homes to choose from. 7,000 at a time, 6,000 at a time as they looked on the MLS, 3,000 at a time. But now when you go to look for a home, you're under 3,000 in the entirety worth of options, whether you're looking for a mobile home or you're looking for a mega mansion in Greenwich. There's very few available. And if you actually look at some of these numbers, our MLS numbers for new listings over the last few years is down 26%. There's just not a lot of homes for sale. And we're going to get to why that is. But if you also look at this, then you'll see, well, we don't have a lot of homes for sale, and our sales are starting to decline. And that's not because the market is crashing. Now, I need to be really clear about this. There are news media sources that are out there that are saying, oh, you know, the housing market is crashing and there's a huge, sales are down and people aren't buying. Well, that may be true in certain segments around the country where they're having a massive recoil on pricing because people who had moved to certain areas of the country for whatever reason during the pandemic are now relocating or repatriating or whatever you want to call it. And so now they're moving out of those areas, and inventory or supply has extended itself, and now you've got pricing that's starting to stabilize. But here in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, some of these areas, we're starting to see that inventory is still very low. And so as you look at days on market, yeah, sure, it picks up a little bit in the wintertime, but not much. We're still looking at about a week to 2 weeks that are on the market. And please be aware that this MLS data is also influenced by new construction. So that's pulling it up. You're really looking at about a week on the market for a properly priced home. And the reason, as I just can not overstate enough, is there are just simply not enough homes on the market. And I want you to focus on this number here. In December of 2022, so that's just last month, we had under 2 months worth of inventory. That's 1.6 months worth of inventory. And what that means is, as you look at this, here are some of your pre-pandemic numbers, or it's just as you got into the pandemic, 5 and 6 months worth of inventory towards a healthier market. And now all of a sudden you've got barely any of that. And so if you're a home buyer in the market and you're considering for yourself, well, I think I should wait. I think, these numbers are going to return. I had one individual the other day say, when is this market going to start to return to normal? And it was simply, well, I need you to really just pay attention and watch some of these videos, because there's so much to say and so much to go over, because it's really hard to try to synthesize all of this down into like one statement here. So let's get back to some of these other numbers here. We've talked about pricing. We've talked about new listings. We've talked about lack of supply. Let me share with you my thoughts as to what I believe is going to happen over the next several months. So everyone's watching out for this. I just recently wrote an article for Real Trends. Some of this in Realty Media gave us a call in order to write for them. Here's my predictions. I'm actually looking at demographics. And the reason that I'm looking at demographics is because I see a wave that's happening. And I see 2 waves that are starting to occur. And as much as I'd love to be to the beach right now, I'm not talking about those waves. I'm actually talking about the waves of when people buy and the times of people's lives in which they buy. And if we look at this is some data which surfaced about Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, the silent generation, greatest generation. And as you can see, there's these waves where people are at, where in 2020, people were at their peak for millennials into that 26, 27, 28 range. Well, here's the thing, is that most of these home buyers, these first-time home buyers, are in their late 20s to early 30s is when you start to buy your first home. Now, many people buy, yes, that's true, in the early 20s. That's possible. But the reason I'm no longer suggesting that those are your first-time home buyers is obviously due to wages, yes, but also due to interest rates being higher and less appealing towards someone who might be in their very early 20s, and maybe someone in their late 20s to early 30s has the purchasing power to be able to afford in today's market with increased interest rates. Now, I want to be careful here that there are so many loan solutions that are out there right now that people are just unaware of. Possibilities to buy down your interest rates and have your interest rate lowered by 3 full points. That's 300 basis points. Two full points, 200 basis points, or a full point. You can buy it down in the temporary or in the long term. There's so many strategies. I'd love for you to just comment below. If you're watching live, go ahead and comment below on that. And so there's availability for so many people to purchase these homes. But I actually see a wave coming. And I'd love to hear in the comments if you think I'm completely wrong here, or maybe I'm onto something. And the reason that I want to talk about this is this wave of buyers that I see, this millennial population of 82.22 million. This is actually greater than the baby boomer generation. Our generation of millennials is ready to buy as much as possible. And in fact, last year, of the single family population of home buyers, they are around that 40 to 50% of the buyers in an article that I just saw by CoreLogic. And so if that's the case, we've got a significant wave over the next year that I believe is going to hit, where you're going to have a lot of first-time home buyers reaching out, taking advantage of these buy-down programs, and are going to buy houses. and my understanding and belief, and I think it's going to be, corrected, I'm sure, by some. I'm by far not the smartest guy out there when it comes to real estate. I'm simply trying to look at some of this data here, and I could be interpreting it incorrectly. But my thought is that we're actually going to have a very strong year when it comes to real estate. And my prediction here is that this millennial population, at least in Connecticut and abroad, has a great amount of, we're looking at jobs, we're looking at increases there, and they're going to have a great purchasing power. Well, what are they going to buy is going to be the next question. And I would love to take a look at, and I hopefully I still have this up here. This is data that I found from Congress. And let's see if I can pull this up here. I pulled an article up from the Congressional Retirement Ages. Retirement here. Let's see if we can find that. And there's a few details here that I found from Congress on retirement ages. I don't appear to have that. But what's indicated here is that a significant greater portion of the population has been retiring. And that for me is a huge sign that even as we look at this chart, that you're going to start to see a lot of these retirees who did retire over the last 3 to 4 years begin to get ready to put their homes on the market. And so if you're a real estate professional, I could, once again, guys, be completely incorrect here. But if this massive population of people, if you're watching the chart here, are all in this retirement stage, and they're all pushing towards retirement, you're going to start to see homes hit the market for retirees who are looking to downsize either into 55 and older communities, or if they haven't already, or they're looking to downsize into longer term care homes all throughout here. And my suspect is that that's going to be a majority of the population for that age group segment. They're going to be putting their homes to the market. And if you're looking to sell real estate, that's a massive market that has great opportunity. Because I believe that you're going to have the availability, those real estate agents that understand that there's these waves of populations that go in these spurts. At times, we're going to have huge building waves. At other times, we're going to have huge retirement waves. And last year, to my understanding, was a huge, significant year for retirees. And you can start to see a migration of population from colder states to warmer states. And so my suspect is you're going to see a lot of sales in Connecticut of retirees moving to warmer states in the Sun Belt. And so I suggest that first-time homebuyers may have a good amount of homes, which may have some opportunity to potentially build equity in, et cetera. And so this is on my market watch, are home owners who are about to retire or who have retired, who are planning to move south or relocate and downsize. I'm looking at that. And I'm also looking at the millennial population who are possibly looking to buy first-time homes. I'm not looking at Gen X as much. I am looking at Gen Z to see potential first-time home buyers for those who are a little bit more aggressive. But I'd love to see in the comments below, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm completely off here? Are we potentially instead headed for further recession in the housing market? I'm not talking just economically and globally. Obviously, there's so much going on in the world. We still have the war in Ukraine going on. Our political environment is all over the place. The stock market and bonds and securities, those appear still volatile. But as I look at the data for rents, as I look at the data for housing prices, for delinquencies, for demographics, what I can see is a movement of people towards areas of warmer areas in that retirement age bracket. And I can see a strong millennial buyership happening. And my advice to real estate agents is be mindful of your communication towards the millennial population and towards that boomer population, and be educating as much as possible towards the tips for downsizing, the best places to live, towards developers, a huge opportunity for retirement housing is still present. We've got a huge retirement population that's headed our way. And so this is what I'm seeing. Again, I could be completely wrong. Happy to be wrong here, guys. I'd love to see it in the comments. But if you're looking to buy a home this year, my strong suggestion to you is this. You've got about a 30-day window here, maybe 45, before the spring market really hits. And when does that hit? That usually hits just after Super Bowl. And we start to see people get ready to put their homes on the market in the middle of February. And then by March, we start to see the contracts start to get written and a lot more competition. So if you're on the fence, maybe if you're just watching this and you want to share this with someone who's been considering about buying a home, this is the data. I'm not making this up. You look for it for yourself. You can I can put some of these sources in the comments below. But share this with someone who's looking to buy a house, who's been considering, let's wait and see. I don't see inflation slowing down anytime. I see mortgage rates starting to stabilize a little bit. I see maybe housing prices not increasing as dramatically, but still increasing due to demand and a lot of that millennial demand. And if you're waiting for interest rates to cool down, you're going to need to be watching inflation, and you're going to be hoping that the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell just continues to hammer away at these interest rates by increasing them from the Federal Reserve, and watching as interest rates on mortgages potentially stabilize a little bit more with that. But don't be surprised if you see those egg prices continuing to increase, if you see your gasoline prices fluctuate as well. My last prediction is this. It's going to be a political one. Any administration that's in office is going to want to appear as like the world is as rosy as possible. And so as we head into these very uncertain times, economically and politically, my suspect is that there's going to be some more and further government involvement, not only through the interest rate increases, but as much as possible in order to make it appear as though things are as rosy as can be. My suspect is some way they're going to figure out to get these interest rates back down into 2024. So that way, when it comes around with this election cycle, they can comment on how well not only they've handled COVID-19 and the pandemic, but also what you're paying at the pump, what you're paying for eggs, and what you're paying for housing. So we are in a crisis for housing, and it's not going away anytime soon. We're not going to build our way out of it due to the costs. We're not going to see a shortage of everyone stop needing houses as long as millennials are around and they need to grow families. And so if you've been considering selling a house, this is my message to you as well. You would be very wise as you make your New Year's resolutions and as you look to 2023 to reach out sooner than later to me in order to determine the valuation of what your house is. Many of our customers have already taken advantage of some of our end of the year home valuation reports. And so they already have those in their inboxes and still more to be delivered. But if you have not taken advantage of that and you're a home seller, one of your greatest assets is appreciating at a significant rate. And we may be in a plateau over the next year or two with slight increases, but not as dramatic as the years before. And there's going to be some strong demand for your house. If you're not sure where to go, that's another big concern that people are having. Well, that's actually being solved by the market as well. Just like loan products are being put out to be able to help home buyers be able to purchase homes, lots of sellers are actually interested in seller financing options. They're interested in off-market transactions, and we've got a wide network of real estate agents across Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Florida, and across the entire globe. To be very transparent with you, our brokerage is the fastest growing independent brokerage in the world. And we've got connections all over, so we can help you whether you're selling in Dubai or whether you're selling in Danbury. And so I'm grateful for those who are watching here. Please comment below if you disagree. Comment below if you agree. And it would be a privilege of mine if you could share this post so that it got around to those individuals in Connecticut, New England, who are looking to buy a house or sell a house in the next year. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you found this valuable. Please subscribe to my YouTube, and please follow me on Instagram and Facebook. If you're a real estate agent, please follow us at Real Estate Health and Wealth, our Facebook page there. Have a great day, everyone.